So, in the Tian Xia World Guide, there is a new type of creature called an animated ink drop, and it is worth noting that this creature has a specific weakness called blotting, where you can grapple the creature and then smear it across a piece of paper to destroy it. And I think we can all agree that that is the most obviously evil action a player could ever take. Seriously, who would do that to this little guy? Today, we're going to talk about the Lost Omens Tian Xia World Guide for Pathfinder 2nd Edition on today's episode of the Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello, travelers and tourists. My name is Mark, and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller that is guaranteed to pronounce something incorrectly during the course of today's video, so I just want to get this out of the way up front. Please forgive me if I say something wrong. I tried to research and practice, but I still guarantee you I'm going to mess something up, and I'm sorry if I do. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder, and welcome to a review video of the Lost Omen Tian Xia World Guide for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This is another book in the Lost Omens line for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which is the line of products that Paizo uses to focus in on their campaign setting. Their mainline products may have some tie-ins to the Golarion setting, but tend to be relatively system neutral, whereas the Lost Omens line is intended to be specific to the actual campaign setting that Paizo has published for their game world. And we are in the middle of a series of releases, all intending to highlight the section of Golarion known as Tian Xia. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Tian Xia, this is the section of the Golarion campaign setting that is inspired by real-world Asian culture and mythology and heritage. Basically, if you are interested in Asian-style storytelling, this is the book that draws from a lot of those real-world inspirations in the Golarion campaign setting. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a brief overview of my thoughts about this product, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think that this product really sets a very positive standard going forward for the Lost Omens line that Paizo does. The Lost Omens line of books is a series that I've had some struggles with throughout the course of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I think that Paizo has some of the best setting writers in the TTRPG industry. I've said that many times, and I continue to hold that to be true. But in 2nd Edition, the Lost Omens line, I feel like, has had some variability in quality that has occasionally left a bad taste in my mouth, but I'll go ahead and tell you up front here, I am very impressed with what Paizo has done with the Lost Omens World Guide, and I think it sets the stage for some really good products going forward, so I'm going to talk about that today. However, before I get into all of that, there are a few things that I want to let you know up front. First off, Paizo did provide me with a free review PDF copy of the Tian Xia World Guide, and while they have not attempted to influence this review in any way, shape, form, or fashion, I still want to be upfront that they did provide that, so thank you very much to Paizo for sending me that and giving me an opportunity to review this product. I'm not sure if you can see it, I did pick up a physical copy on my own, just because I do like this product, but I do think it's important for anyone viewing this video to know that I was given that free copy. And that point leads to another point that I commonly talk about in my review videos, which is this. Please remember that everything that I say in this video is just an opinion. I am some random guy on the internet, and while I do my best to offer honest reviews on this channel, I will always recommend that the best approach to any product is to try before you buy. So if you have the opportunity to check out this product at your fine local gaming store or borrow it from a friend or something to that effect, that is always going to give you the best idea of whether or not a product is right for you. So that is something I will always encourage you to do. One last thing to get out of the way before we dive into the review proper. Please remember, if you enjoy content like this, there's a lot of things you can do to support the channel. You can like and share the video, you can subscribe to the channel, you can also check out my free Discord or my Patreon. All of the links to that will be in the video description below. But with all that out of the way, let's get started. The Lost Omens Tian Xia World Guide comes with an MSRP of $79.99, but it is worth noting that this is an over 300-page book. There is a ton of content in this book, divided into about 32 different chapters covering the history of Tian Xia, some of the major creatures that live there, some of the factions, the religions, and each of the different major nations or regions in the Tian Xia setting, as well as a small bestiary that is included at the back of the book, which really means that there is a ton of content in this product. And honestly, if I was going to try to just sample everything that you can find in this book, it would take forever to get there. So as a result, I want to focus mostly on the big picture overview here, but I do think that there is a lot to like about this product, so let's do what I normally do in my reviews, giving you my initial or target grade for the Lost Omens Tian Xia World Guide, and then giving you my actual final grade for this book to let you know whether or not I think Paizo hit what they were aiming for with this product. And this is where I want to talk about one of the most important things that I think this book represents, which is a change in the way that Paizo is approaching their Lost Omens content. Paizo is actually going to be doing another book for Lost Omens Tian Xia called the Lost Omens Tian Xia Character Guide later this year. Essentially what Paizo has chosen to do is they have split up the content for Tian Xia into the World Guide, which could very easily be labeled the Game Master Guide, if you will, for Tian Xia. And then in the second book, they're going to have the Character Guide, which is going to cover a lot more of the stuff that is going to be player character oriented for the Tian Xia setting and the stories that would go with that setting. Now what that means is ultimately the Tian Xia World Guide for me is a classic example of what I would consider to be a D-tier TTRPG product. Now before you get angry, let me explain. One of the big things that I consider when I am reviewing products on this channel is the concept of utility. How much are you going to use a product that you purchase for your games? A really well-produced product that just sits on your shelf because you never use it may be nice to have, but it's not very useful for the actual play, and as a result, that feels a little less necessary for me as a collector. So when I'm approaching my reviews, I always begin by asking who is the product targeted towards, and how is the product intended to be used. With the Tian Xia World Guide, you have a product that is targeted to game masters or storytellers, and that is primarily intended to be used as a resource for building games, but will almost never actually be pulled out during a game. On top of that, the fact that the Tian Xia World Guide is a setting-specific product, and really it goes a little bit past that, it's a portion of a setting-specific line of products. What that essentially means is the Tian Xia World Guide is really a product that is targeted towards game masters or storytellers who are very interested in running a game that is set in the region of Tian Xia, or maybe used as a resource for developing other similar Asian-themed stories in their own Pathfinder 2e games. This is a niche product inside a line of niche products, and that makes it very much a D-tier product. Is it something that might be nice to have? Sure, but is it something that's really critical to add to your collection? Probably not. So as a result, when I come to something like the Tian Xia World Guide, I am looking at a product that I ultimately consider very optional for collecting as part of my TTRPG hobby. Now, earlier in this video, I did show you that I did buy a physical copy of this book, but just the general nature of this book makes it something that's going to be a little more niche in who it appeals to. Now, with all of that being said, how well do I think they did with this book? And the answer is, I think they did amazing. Overall, I feel like the Tian Xia World Guide is very, very well done. You have some absolutely fantastic artwork, you have very interesting regional deep dives, and by the way, these deep dives can go deep underground, or possibly even out to sea. It's a lot of very interesting, well thought out, well developed content, and as a storyteller, there are a ton of things in this book that I could point out and say, this inspires a story, that inspires a story. There's a lot of stuff in this book that I'm like, oh, I could do something with this at my gaming table. All in all, I really think that Paizo did a fantastic job with this book, and I give it a final grade of a C+. And please understand that that C+ is really only held back by the fact that this is ultimately a niche product. It's well done, it's well presented, I like the quality of this product as a whole, but I do think you need to bear in mind when you're considering what to purchase and when to purchase something that this is ultimately going to be a niche product, and ultimately I feel like the Tian Xia character guide, even though I haven't even seen it yet, because of the fact that it appeals to a larger segment of Paizo's customer base, the people who are playing the game, I ultimately think the character guide is going to be a higher priority on the books to pick up list, but I am very happy that I picked this book up too, because as a storyteller, there is some fantastic content in here. And really, from a big picture, I think the fact that Paizo split up the Tian Xia resource books into the World Guide for storytellers and the Character Guide for players, ultimately I think that that is the ideal way to do books like this. I think it just leads to better quality overall. For example, one of my favorite settings in the Golarion campaign setting is the Mwange Expanse. I absolutely love the Mwange Expanse. Old Mage Jatimbe is one of my favorite characters, and in almost any Pathfinder game that I run, I try to find some excuse for my players to visit the Mwange Expanse at some point, but when they released the book for the Mwange Expanse, the quality wasn't quite what I was looking for. At the time, I struggled to understand why, but now that I look at the Tian Xia World Guide, with Game Master content really set aside for Game Masters, and the player content set in a completely separate book, now I think I understand why I had trouble with some of the earlier products in the Lost Omens line. When you are mixing Game Master-oriented content and player-oriented content into the same book, I think it tends to clash and cause the given book to have an identity crisis as a whole. So the fact that Paizo seems to be splitting out Game Master and player content into separate products as part of the Lost Omens line, I think that is a very positive step going forward. It might mean that there are fewer people specifically interested in the Tian Xia World Guide, as there's not really a lot of player content in this book, but the improvement of the quality of content in this book, because it is geared so heavily to storytellers, that is something that I am very happy to see, and I hope that Paizo sticks with this model going forward. Another thing that I'd like to point out, and I'm a little hesitant to bring this up because the internet can occasionally be a emotional place, but one of the things I really like about this book is I think it handles the subject of cross-cultural storytelling in a very mature fashion. Now, anytime that you talk about subjects like culture, or let's go ahead and be honest here, about subjects like race and racism, there are some really heavy emotions that are tied to that, and that's one of those subjects where the conversation can very easily go astray. One of the cool things about Paizo and the way that they write their setting is they draw so very heavily from a diverse array of inspirations from all around the real world in terms of how they create their setting of Golarion. It is truly one of the reasons I love Golarion as a campaign setting. Paizo is basically just taking some of the coolest stuff from every corner of the globe and finding ways to use it as inspiration for their game. I absolutely love that, but there is this delicate line that must be walked about how do you do cross-cultural storytelling respectfully. Paizo, in publishing their setting books, often attempts to address or talk about some of the issues of racism and cross-cultural storytelling and how to be respectful in doing so. And let me just say that I appreciate that Paizo does that. In the introduction of this book, I think this may be one of the most practical and informative discussions of those topics that I've ever seen Paizo do. They have statements like, Tian Xia can't be summed up in a single book. No land can. The following pages offer an outline of the city's cultures, peoples, places, creatures, flora, and history of what can be found here. Look with a willingness to learn, and you might find as many things in common as there are different. They talk about what it means to be respectful in approaching stories from other places, and one of the things I really love is on this side of the page you will see 5 tips for Tian Xia, which actually talks about some of the commonalities of stories that are pulled from Asian culture or Asian mythology. I absolutely love this, and I feel like I learned some things about storytelling from this conversation. I feel like some of the stuff that they discussed here was very practical, very approachable, and I feel like I walked away from this book knowing a little bit more about storytelling around the globe than I knew before I picked this book up, and that is a high compliment coming from me. I think the best way to build bridges between multiple communities is through sharing stories with other people, and I think that TTRPGs as a whole are great at bridging communities, specifically because they give us an opportunity to build stories with other people. So seeing the way that Paizo approached this conversation in this book really is a major positive for me, and I really appreciate how Paizo approached that in this product. I think it was very well done. Still, when it comes to the content of this book, please remember it is very much geared towards storytellers, towards the game master side of the screen, and understand that the vast majority of content in this book is going to be stuff that the game master is going to be interested in, and there is very little that players are ultimately going to want to dig into. The next thing I want to do is a rapid fire, just kind of a list of the things you can find in this book, and I will pause and point out a couple of the things that players might be interested in, but bear in mind that the vast majority of this book really is geared towards game masters, and ultimately I think that this is a product that is intended for storytellers. The first section is going to be on the history of Tian Xia, going all the way back to the ancient past, up to the present, which is known as the Age of Succession. You get a discussion of the Imperial Dragons, and when you get into the full storyline of Tian Xia, you will understand why the Imperial Dragons are so important to highlight as part of this book. But this section is going to give you descriptions of general groups of dragons like forest dragons, as well as specific representatives of the different groups of dragons. You're going to get a discussion of some of the factions that you can find in Tian Xia, and you will note that the factions listed here are all specific to Tian Xia. You don't really get a discussion of, say, the Pathfinder Society in Tian Xia. This is about the groups that are specific to this region of the world. One of the few sections that is likely to be of interest to players is the religion section. It's going to go over the major deities of the Tian Xia setting. Some of them, like Irori, are present in the Inner Sea, but many of them, like Jin Li, are unique to the Tian Xia setting. There are a phenomenal number of new deity options in this section. One of my personal favorites is the Divine Dancers, Mugura and Nritu, but there are definitely several fun options here, and you also get a discussion of some of the philosophies that are practiced in and around Tian Xia as well. Another one of the few sections that are of note to player characters are the Test of Virtue, which is a special type of ritual that comes with the Trial trait, and allows player characters to undergo specific trials in order to gain specific benefits. There are 5 specific options offered here, and of them the one I think will see the most use is probably the Unseen Blademaster ritual, because the blind swordsman trope is one of those that you see pop up in a lot of stories, and I could see a lot of players being interested in this particular option. From there, we get chapters on the various regions in and around Tian Xia. We have Bachuan, Chuye, the Darklands, Goka, Hongal, Huangat, Jinin, Kaoling, Quanlai, Lingxin, Linvare, Minata, Minkai, the Forest of Spirits, Nagajor, Poli, Quain, Shangguang and the Wall of Heaven, Shinmin, Songbai, Tangmai, Tianjing, Valashraj, the Valashmai Jungle, Wanshao, Shahui, Jidao, and the various oceans around Tian Xia, and Ziha. And given the length of time that I just spent devoted to nothing but reading the names of various regions, that should give you an idea of the incredible diversity that is offered in this Tian Xia setting book. There is just a ton of content here. When you look at these different regions, you're going to see these quick glance information pages that talk about the nations, the major peoples, the major languages that are there. It's going to give you a snapshot of the major religions, as well as some of the major resources that might be traded in this area. You'll get an overview of the kinds of storytelling associated with that area, as well as a discussion of the geography in and around it. You'll often have a snapshot map that is a little more detailed than the big map that comes with the book. Each section does come with a very convenient pronunciation guide. I am very grateful for those. And you'll see that there's even a discussion of what life is like inside of a given region. You see discussions of culture, government, and important cities or locations inside of a given region. So each of the chapters on these various regions goes into some pretty good detail about these regions and gives you a lot of content that can serve as inspiration for stories that you might want to tell at your gaming table. Now, I will note there is, in one of these chapters, one final section that player characters might be particularly interested in, and that is in the Oceans of Tian Xia section. There is a discussion of Tian Xia ships, and if you're like me and you love vehicles in a game, you are probably going to be excited to have rules for the various types of ships that PCs might be able to use in their adventures. It's definitely something I was glad to see. The last formal section is the Bestiary, which is going to introduce several creatures that are specific to the Tian Xia setting and that are often inspired by Asian culture, Asian myth, and those types of stories. I've already pointed out in the animated handcraft the ink drop creature, which is absolutely adorable and is definitely one of my favorite pieces of artwork in this book. One of the monsters that creeps me out the most is this unique CR20 creature called the Great Flood, which could definitely serve as the inspiration for a major end-of-campaign arc in a Tian Xia style story. I definitely think this creature is very compelling. And then another one of my favorites is the 5-color orchid mantis, which is a mantis that has lived long enough and grown powerful enough that it has begun to absorb and understand magic in the region around it. Do I love this creature because I think the artwork is amazing, or is it just because as a storyteller I want to torture my players with an ability called harvesting limbs? Who knows what the real answer may be, but this is another one of my favorites in this book. But that is a quick overview of what the Tian Xia World Guide has to offer, and like I said, I am very impressed with this product. Paizo has made a deliberate choice to separate out Game Master-centered content and player-centered content, and as a result, you have a book that is ultimately a very niche product, but because it's a very niche product, they're able to go into a lot of detail, and they're able to provide a lot of suggestion and ideas, and just overall, the quality of this product is something that I truly enjoy. So even though I consider this to be a very niche product, this was one I was very happy to pick up and add to my collection, and I truly hope that Paizo is going to keep with this GM product, player product division going forward with the Lost Omens line, because I think it's going to serve the overall quality of the line in future releases. But those are just my thoughts. The time has come for me to turn the conversation over to you. What are your thoughts about the Lost Omens Tian Xia World Guide, and do you have any questions about this product? Jump down to the comments section and let me know what you think. And there is a particular favorite for you, be it a region or a new deity or a creature or just something you really enjoyed, be sure to highlight it in the comments section, because there is truly a ton of content here and I have skipped over a lot of very entertaining stuff. I absolutely love hearing from you all. It's the best part of this job, and I'm excited to hear what you think about this product. Don't forget to do all of that other stuff that helps to support the channel. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can check out my free Discord, my Patreon. All of those links will be in the video description below. But, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.